Welcome everyone to another episode of Nikon TV. My name is Ogonek, your host, and let's jump right into this because we have announced multiple things in the last little while, and we're gonna get through all of it. So, what are we gonna be talking about? Well, last week, we went and announced new firmware for the Z9. This is firmware 3.0. Now, I'm not gonna be talking about every single aspect of it because, to be totally honest, there's over 30 different things that we've improved, and that would just be crazy. So I'm gonna pick my favorites, I'll go through them one by one, and hopefully you'll find that they're down your alley as well. Next, we're gonna be talking about a new video accessory. This is the Nikon MC-N10. It's a video grip for the Z9, soon to be the Z6 II and Z7 II. And then we'll also be talking about this bad boy. We'll be talking about the Z600mm f4 TC VR S-line lens. But I'll leave that till afterwards. I'll leave the Z9 till very last, and I will jump back into the video grip. Now, why do we even need a video grip? The Z9 that I'm recording on right now, I don't think anybody's complaining about the fact that it is one of the strongest hybrid mirrorless video systems on the market right now. It is just absolutely amazing. But what we have to keep in mind is it's not just about the camera, because I did say system there, and you do need a system when you are recording. A lot of times, as you want to get higher and higher in your video quality, you're going to rely on things like a tripod. You're going to have a video head on it. You're going to have maybe a shoulder rig. You're going to have a slider, maybe a gimbal. So using any of those type of accessories to go and improve your overall image quality by giving you stability, but at the same time giving you motion in your shot as well. Well, what's the one thing you can't do when you have your camera on a gimbal? You cannot touch it. Because if you do, that kind of defeats the whole purpose of why you're using a gimbal, to take you out of the equation and any shake you're going to be putting into the actual video itself. So if we're not allowing you to touch the camera when you're on a gimbal, I say we, but the whole kind of market as a whole, if you're not allowed to touch the camera, how do you change your settings? Well, to be honest, there's a few ways to do it, but for the Nikon system, for the Z9 in particular, there's no third-party accessory that allows you access to the settings mid-scene. And that's key, mid-scene. You can obviously change your settings before a scene, you can change them after a scene, but you can't change them during without compromising the stability or the movement of your slider, of your gimbal, of your shoulder rig. So that is where the Nikon MC-N10 really comes into its own. And right off the bat, let's take a look at the actual grip itself. It actually feels really similar to a Nikon grip. Hey, go figure, it actually feels like a Nikon grip. Feels really comfortable in your hands. It is powered by two AA batteries in the bottom here, and it is connected to the camera through a USB-C cable. So with the Z9, it would be USB-C to USB-C, and that is going to give you a rock solid connection. Yes, we probably could have gone and put Bluetooth, we could have put other additional, let's say, Wi-Fi options in there, but I don't know about you, but depending on where you are, you're always worried about interference with, if you're at a major convention and you're using this to kind of go through the crowds, get a sense of where everybody is, how busy it is. We're all back to in-person events now, it's amazing. But when there's that much interference, are you going to have full compatibility with the grip to the body? Well, with the cable, you don't have to worry about it. I don't care if you're in the middle of nowhere in a field or if you are in that busy convention area, you're going to have rock solid connection. So USB-C cable plugs it into the Z9 right now, but we will be announcing future firmware for the Z6 II and the Z7 II that'll give compatibility with the grip. Now, when you actually look at it, it looks very similar, almost as if we lopped off the side of a Nikon mirrorless Z body. You have the AF on switch, you have the front and rear command dials, you have the sub selector, you have a display button that's been shifted down obviously a little bit, you have an info button, you have the plus minus, everything looks as if it should. To be totally honest with you, the two main differences are the actual function buttons on the front of the actual grip. And I say front because with most of the bodies, it's a push in that way. But we're actually having to push sideways on the grip to access the function 1 and function 2. It's different, but it's not better or worse. It's just a little bit different. You'll have to get used to it. And then the only other difference is going to be the front and rear command dials. Well, I said that they're there. What else could it be? Well, they're actually, if you can hear, you won't be able to hear, it is completely clickless. So it is a very, very smooth experience. So as you're changing whatever setting it is you've chosen to, you're not going to have a either noise, or there's not going to be any vibrations as you do it. It's going to be a very smooth and seamless switch as you actually go and change your settings. Now, one other last thing I will mention out is the fact that how do you actually connect it to your video rig? How do you connect it to your cage? How do you connect it to your gimbal? Well, it's through an RE rosette. So you'll need an adapter to obviously get it onto whatever accessory it is you're using, but really easy to find, really easy to use, very kind of used in the industry. So you won't have any issue with that. Now, why or what, I'll say, what settings would you go and use for this? Well, there's a couple of main ones that I can kind of think of really easily off the top of my head. The first being if you want to change your exposure settings. So obviously you'll most likely be shooting locked off in manual. You have your shutter speed locked, your aperture locked. Well, your ISO can obviously range up and down using auto ISO, but sometimes you want a little bit more control yourself. And that's where that clickless design really comes into its own, because you can go and customize that rear command dial to go and be your ISO switch. And now with just a very, very quick moving of that switch, you can dial your ISO up or down. If you're changing from a dark location to a bright one, or a bright one to a dark one, you have full control. Another few different options you can go and change are autofocus. So whether you want to actually physically change your autofocus mode mid-shoot, you want to go from wide area to auto, or the opposite way, from auto to wide area to single point, whatever the option is, with one button push, you're able to do it. You're also able to lock your autofocus. If you sometimes have a scene where you'll have, let's say, somebody walking in front of you and your main subject, you can press that lock button that you've, let's say, dedicated, and that will now lock the autofocus until the person in front has moved out of the way. You get off that button, and then it'll jump right back onto your subject with no interruption during your actual scene. So those are just a couple quick options that I'll throw out there, but it really does help make the Z9 more of a system, give you the ability to really change things up when you are out in the real world and you want to change your settings mid-scene. The MCN10 now gives that to you. All right, so now let's go and jump over to the lens. So this is the Z 600mm f4 TCVR S-line lens, and it does not follow in the footsteps of the 800mm, the PF. It does not have PF elements. It does not follow in the footsteps of the Z 400mm, the 4.5, where we made the aperture a little bit smaller, we heavily rearranged the internals of the lens and made it the lightest 400mm on the market. This is following in the footsteps of the exotic 400 f2.8, which when I say exotic, I really mean the pinnacle of technology, the pinnacle of image quality, everything that you would expect from a lens of this caliber, you are going to get. So right off the bat, I don't even really have to go into it. I'll very quickly talk about some of the technologies we have in here because they are very similar to the 400-2.8. We're talking about all the newest lens technologies in terms of the elements that we have. We have an ED element, we have a super ED element, we have two SR elements, those are the short wavelength refractive elements. We have fluorite elements, we have fluorine coating on the front, we have nano coating, we have mesomorphous coating. Both of those help to make sure there's no ghosting or flaring anywhere throughout the frame when you're shooting with a point light source somewhere near where the camera is actually pointing. So everything you would expect has been thrown in here and then some. We also have the same motor that's found in the 400-2.8. That's the SSVCM. That's our Silky Swift voice coil motor that I could do an entire episode on just on that, but it is incredibly fast. Not only the speed, but speed and acceleration are two different things. This and the 400-2.8 accelerate so quickly to get up to speed, but they also brake really quickly as well. And that's a very, very big component of autofocus speed. People just talk about speed, but the acceleration is very, very key as well. On top of the accuracy, the precision and accuracy of this autofocus system is unlike anything we have other than the 400-2.8. The optical encoder we use, blah, 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 blah. Incredibly precise, incredibly accurate. You're gonna make sure that you're gonna get the shot. Now, making sure you get the shot is good, but making sure that the shot is tack sharp is also very important. And all the lens elements that I just talked about, basically you can conclude that this is going to be the best 600 millimeter that we've ever produced. And I'm a little bit biased, but from what I've seen so far, it's probably one of the best 600 mils ever made. Now, I haven't really talked about one of the standout features of this lens. I've talked about the technology, the lens elements, how fast it is, how sharp it's going to be, the image quality is going to be absolutely top notch. But something that this and the 400 millimeter are really putting out into the market is the versatility of the lens. Now, do not get me wrong. I know that it is a bigger lens than what a lot of people, regular just weekend warriors, want to go and carry around, but you're getting that quality that goes along with it. But you're now getting versatility in a way that you didn't get before. With the 400-2.8, you have a 400 millimeter f2.8. You flick with one switch, the ability to turn on the 1.4 teleconverter, giving you 560 mil at f4. Well, this 600 millimeter f4, with a flick of a switch, is now turned into an 840 millimeter f5.6. So now we're really talking about ultra telephoto zoom. Ultra is a little bit much, and I apologize for that, but we're really getting into the ability now to, yes, it's a 600 mil, but with one flick of a switch, you have an 840 mil lens as well. So really pushing the boundaries of not only the optical quality you're gonna get, not only the build quality, but you're also getting stellar versatility in a way that most people aren't used to. Yes, you could go and use, with the old 600 FL, a teleconverter on there. But when you're in the field, if you're on a safari in Africa, you do not want to be swapping in teleconverters while you're out there. Dust, any debris, you don't want that getting onto your sensor. And a lot of people, I will say, also had a little bit of a hesitation in terms of using teleconverters. They didn't like the idea of any loss of quality. Well, one of the nice things that I think people feel a lot more comfortable with is the fact that with a built-in teleconverter, you know that this TC was designed specifically for this optical formula. So theoretically, you are going to be getting as good, if not better, TC performance than you would with a lens you have to put an external TC on top of the fact that Z bodies generally work really well with any teleconverter. So the fact that this one's as good, if not better, it really kind of takes away some of that hesitation people have to, I don't really want to use that teleconverter, to, oh, it's built in. Oh, I know it's going to be really high quality, and the Z body I'm using is going to give me stellar ability to use the TC. Oh, can you use other TCs? And the answer is yes. So you can actually go and use the Z 1.4 TC, or you can stack the Z 2 times TC onto this, giving you almost 1700 millimeters. And then if you throw in the fact that there's a DX crop you can go and use, you can go and get ridiculous reach with this one lens. So really unbelievable. And then one thing I haven't actually talked about, I've been holding it a lot, I haven't been straining, but this is quite a bit lighter than what the previous FL version was. This is 550 grams lighter than the old FL version. And even though, obviously, comparing it against the 800 mil and the 400-2.8, it is definitely a little bit on the longer side, but it is the shortest 600 mil FL on the market right now. So even though it looks rather imposing, it is the smallest. It is one of the lightest, especially if you take into consideration the fact that it has a built-in teleconverter, much lighter than the older generations. There's a lot going for this lens. So I'm wishing that back in September, when we had the London Air Show out here in Ontario, that we were able to go and use this, because I got some amazing shots with the other long super telephotos, but this would have been something special. So I am absolutely dying to get out there and really put this lens through its paces in an event that really kind of would scream for it. So I'm very excited for that. Okay, so we've talked about the new Z 600 mil. We've talked about the new accessory grip. Now let's go and talk about the new firmware that we announced last week for the Z9. Now this is firmware 3.0, and there are a lot of features built into this lens that I just cannot go, or sorry, built into this lens, built into this firmware. I cannot talk about every single feature because there's over 30 of them. And this isn't just, oh yeah, we made language updates from spelling mistakes that we had. This is actual improvements and full-on new features that we're improving on the Z9, even more so than what we've already done. So there's a lot going in there. I'm only going to talk about 5 or 6 of my main ones that I want you to know about. What I want you guys to do though is in the comments below, if you do go through our entire page that shows all of the different improvements, if there's anything that you want to know about, go and throw it in the comments below. I'll go and afterwards go and try and add in the comments some explanation to kind of help you get along with it and kind of wrap your brain around it. Or if you feel that it would actually be beneficial to have a different Nikon TV episode based on some of those additional things that you guys liked rather than just me, put that in the comments below and hopefully we'll be able to do that. All right, so let's now talk about this firmware update. Now the first thing that I want to talk about, it's a video feature and it's called high res zoom. Now, high res zoom, how do you kind of picture this working? Well, what you can do right now is, let's say you're shooting in 8K and you know that your output is going to be 4K. You have the ability in post-production to take that very, very large 8K resolution file and zoom in while you're in post to a new crop without harming your resolution, because as long as you don't go in crazy amounts, you'll still have plenty of resolution to output at 4K. But you will have to be shooting 8K to do that. If you don't want to have to deal with those super large file sizes and all you want is to shoot 4K and export 4K, whether it's for you or whether it's for a client, then that is where this new high-res zoom feature really comes in, because you're able to, with basically the push of a button, zoom in and zoom out up to 2 times fully in camera. And you're recording in 4K and your output is 4K. So you're not losing any resolution while you're actually using this feature. So it has quite a few little benefits. So let me actually show you how you go about using this with the actual camera itself. So right off the bat, we're gonna go into the menu. We're gonna go into the video record menu. And then it's going to be at the very, 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 very bottom. So if you go to high res zoom, so this is where you turn it on. So this is now just the feature activated. There's a few other ways that you can actually go and obviously use this. I'm gonna go into the custom setting menu, go down to G video. The first thing I wanna show you is how you can actually change it. So in G8 high res zoom speed, you can actually go and change the zoom speed so that as you push that button, it's gonna be either slower, you can have standard, or you can have faster. Now, how do you actually activate this function? Well, it's a good thing I'm in the custom setting menu, because I'm gonna go to G2 under custom controls, and this is where you can go and activate it. So let's say I want the function 1 and function 2 buttons to be zoom in and zoom out. How would we go about doing that? So I'm gonna go and activate the function 1, and then, oh, right here, perfect. High res zoom plus. Now you notice that you don't see high res zoom minus, that's the zoom out. Well, don't worry about it. You activate 1 and it activates both at the exact same time. So you can see here, function 1 is to zoom in, the tele, and then function 2 is the wide option. So with 1 button push, I'm able to zoom in, and the other button is to zoom out. So very, very quick. Now obviously you can do that on the Z9. If you were using the MCN10, you can do that as well. You can go and customize the function 1 and 2 buttons to actually activate zoom in and zoom out. Now, let's say you sometimes want to vary the speed at which you're going to be zooming in and out, because obviously I showed you already, you can do slower, standard, and faster speed. What if you do want the ability to vary that speed during a single sequence? Well, let me go and find this here. If we go all the way down to the lens control ring. Now you can obviously do a lot of different things with this. You can do, whether it's manual focus, you can do power aperture, exposure comp, ISO, but you can also activate high res zoom. So this means that the function ring on all of our Z lenses, if you turn it slowly, then it's going to zoom in slowly. If you turn it quickly, it's going to zoom in quickly. So a few different ways to go and do the same thing, but it's really cool in the sense that you can actually have both of these set up so that you can go and have the slow, and then if you want quickly to go and do it yourself, you can go and grab manual control. So that's some really, really cool functionality on the video side. On the stills side, a lot of what I'm probably going to talk about, all the features, yeah, most of them are going to be talking about if you're more of a birding, wildlife, action sequence type shooter. And that really, you're going to see that when I talk about the new C mode. Now, what do I mean by C mode? Not scene, but C mode. Now, we already have with the creation of the Z9, when it first came out, firmware 1.0, we had C30. C30 was 30 frames a second, JPEG at 45 megapixels. You had full autofocus, you had full metering capability, you could shoot up to 4 seconds depending on the card you were using. We also had C120. C120 was 120 frames a second at 11 megapixels, and still with autofocus, still with metering, and still up to 4 seconds worth of shooting. Now we're creating a new C mode. This is C60. So this is trying to find a good balance between the two, because some people wanted more than 30, but they wanted more speed than 30 frames a second, but they maybe wanted more resolution than the 11 that you got from C120. So with C60, it's DX crop, so you automatically get more reach. So most sports action shooters are okay getting more reach. You don't always have to go and have a 600mm with you if you have the ability to use that 1.5 times crop. So you're going to get 60 frames a second at the DX crop, which means just under 20 megapixels. That's 19.4, something along those lines. And with that along comes with autofocus, metering, and up to 4 seconds of shooting. You can really see that I'm hammering home those last couple points, because with this functionality, all the C modes, whether it's 30, 60, or 120, these are functional modes. We really wanted to make sure that they're usable in the real world. We didn't want to build out some new fancy feature just to say that we have it, but to not give you autofocus, to not give you metering, to only let you shoot for a fraction of a second. We wanted to make it that in the real world, this is a usable feature. So C60 for me can be very usable if you want that extra reach, if you want that extra speed, and if you want that extra resolution. So the third thing I want to talk about is, as Mark Cruz, the previous host, used to say, it would dovetail nicely with this next feature, because shooting those long sequences at 30, 60, 120, or even just at the regular 20 frames per second, going through the sequences, it's a little bit difficult to sometimes figure out where one starts, where one ends, how many do you have, how many shots do you have per sequence. So if you are shooting a ton of different sequences, you want to be able to manage them a little bit easier. Well, that is where the new Z9 firmware 3.0, for me, I'm really excited about. So for me, you know what, let's just get into it. Let me show you some of these new modes for managing the sequences that you're going to be shooting. So right off the bat, let's go and jump into playback display options. Now, obviously we have focus point, we have all sorts of different other things that we can go in and show, but I want to go and activate mark first shot in series. So I've activated the playback, and you can see in the top right-hand corner that kind of multi-shot view, and it says 19. So this, what I just activated, tells you that you have 19 shots in this sequence. And if I cycle through, I don't want to count them all, but some of you out there may want to see that I'm being honest here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18, 19. And there's the next sequence, which is a 31 shot sequence. So that initial little 19 or 31 tells you how many shots in the sequence. Okay, well, that's a good start, but what else can we now do? So if we go into a brand new menu option, series playback, we have a few different options. And I'm actually going to jump and start off with the very bottom one here, list series as single thumbnails. So if I go and turn that on and I go back into this option here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the minus button. So this is going to be the zoom out button. So I'm going to go to a thumbnail view where I don't have a single image. So if I zoom out and if I can zoom out again if I want, you can see that you're not seeing individual shots. You're seeing individual sequences. And you can see this one has 19 in it, this one 31, this one 12. And if I want to jump into them, I'll go over to this one and I'll press the plus and I'll press the plus. And now I'm into the actual initial sequence that I showed you guys at the very beginning. And I can cycle through them as I want. Okay, well, that works. A lot of people would understand that workflow and it kind of works with how they already do things. That's great, but there were two other options in here. So I really like this sub-selector displays first shot. So what happens when I activate this and I go back into my playback? Most people, and I'm generalizing here, but I don't think most people when they're shooting with a Z9 are going through their playback images using the sub-selector. The sub-selector is the 8 joystick autofocus control switch that we have there. And I would say most people are going to use the rear command dial, or they're going to use the D-pad, the up, down, left, right D-pad. And you can still use those, and that functionality has not changed at all. But by me toggling that new switch, I'm going to now go using the autofocus sub-selector. I'm going to use it using the left and right arrows. Boom, 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 and now I'm going to go back. Boom, boom, boom. So by going left and right, I'm able to jump between sequences. And let's say I want to now go through the sequence. I can use the normal command dial, I can use the D-pad, or I could go and use so now I'm going to go and press down, 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 and that will cycle through all of the individual sequences. Or the individual shots of that sequence. So it allows you to jump between sequences any which way you want. Do you want to zoom out, see them all, pick the one you want, and then zoom back in? Do you want to just quickly jump through them using the autofocus selector? You can do either one of those. Now, there's one other option in here in the series playback, auto series playback. So if I turn this on, what's going to happen? Well, when you wait for, it's going to be around 2 seconds at the start of a sequence, around 2 seconds afterwards, it's going to basically turn into what looks like an animated GIF. And yes, I did say GIF and not GIF. The basis of this is that you can quickly go to it, allow it to play the entire sequence. It's not outputting it, it's just playing it back quickly. So you can see, is this the sequence that I want to either save, that I want to star, that I want to save for later, whatever your option is. When I go here, and I'm going to jump here, wait 1, 2, and it plays all of the shots for me. I'll jump to the next sequence, and it'll play all the shots in that sequence. So that's a really cool option to be able to quickly jump through your shots, be able to see it. But let's say you say, oh, I don't want to wait 2 seconds. I want to activate this myself. Well, don't worry, you can. So if you go into the custom settings menu and you go to F controls and we go to custom controls playback, you can now go and set this. Oh, it's actually already set. So if you go into, let's say, any of these buttons, but I'm going to go function 1, start series playback. By me now pressing function 1, so I'm going to go back here, and I'm going to press function 1, I'm now in control of starting and stopping this. So when I press the function button in, it's going to play it as a quick animated GIF. When I let go, it's going to stop. When I press it again, it's going to keep playing it. When I stop, it's going to stop. So there's multiple ways for you to see your sequences if you shoot this way all the time. So for that type of user, it can be really, really powerful and really increase your workflow while you're actually there still shooting. All right, now, what else have we changed that I really like? Depending on the autofocus mode that you shoot in, depending on the scenarios, the environment that you're shooting in, you may sometimes want to go and change or have changed the autofocus point color. Now, an example, if you're using 3D autofocus, which is what this feature is aimed at, if you're using 3D autofocus, you only have a white box. Well, what happens if you're shooting in the snow? Seeing a white box on, you're shooting, let's say, an owl or a little rabbit in the snow. It's very difficult to be able to see where that box is sometimes when everything around you is white. So by going into here and us going all the way down to A11, focus point display, we can actually go and change the 3D focus point color from white to red. So now you don't have to worry about what your subject is. You can very quickly change this. So it doesn't matter what your environment is, doesn't matter where your subject is, you can go and change from white to red. All right, so that is, how many have I gone through so far? 4. I'm gonna go through one more, and this is for something totally different. This is nowhere near related to shooting fast action. This is literally the complete opposite. What we're talking about is focus shift shooting. Now, focus shift shooting is designed around usually macro. You can obviously do landscape, but it really comes into its own when you're talking about very, very, very tight, close-in macro shots that allows you to shoot up to 300 shots all in a sequence, automate the process, and then you can go and combine them afterwards in software and post. Well, what happens if you're shooting multiple focus shift sequences? I guess that isn't that different because we're still shooting sequences. But what happens if you're shooting multiple sequences and you want to go back to the exact same focus point every single time? Well, you have to manually go and tell it where to focus every single time. And if you're doing 1 or 2, okay, fine. But if you're doing 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, you want to change the focus step width, you want to change the number of shots, anything you want to change, you want to go back and redo it, you have to manually tell the camera the initial starting point. Not anymore. So if we go all the way down to focus position auto reset, this will now automatically, sequence after sequence after sequence, go right back to where you initially set it. So that for me is a really, really cool feature. Again, it's going to save you time when you're actually in the field rather than having to go through it every single time. All right, so let me go and move that out of the way. So we've gone through the new firmware 3.0 with the Z9. We've talked about the new Z600mm f4, and we've talked about the video grip in a couple different ways. So all 3 of these products are similar, but at the same time, they're quite different. And that for me is kind of what's fun about this, is because I get to kind of jump on here and tell you guys from very wildly different points of view, because there's going to be some people watching this who are interested in the video aspects. There's going to be some people watching this who are interested in the fast burst, the action, the birding sequences. And then there's going to be some macro shooters out there who say, you know what, I want this. Well, hopefully you've seen that in the small little section that I've talked about so far today, that we're really improving the Z system, the Z9, the NiKKOR Z lineup, the accessories for video for a wide variety of users. And like I said, for the firmware 3.0, I only touched on 4 or 5 different things. We improved the autofocus. We made it better low light autofocusing. We gave it better low contrast autofocusing capabilities. We had better tracking overall. So there's a lot of things that I just can't really get into just for time, but we've really continued to move that bar forward. So if you guys are curious, and you have other suggestions, because obviously you can see that we're listening, make sure to throw your suggestions for future firmware updates into the comments below. I want to hear them. I always have kind of a running list going of things that I like to talk about. But as I mentioned earlier in the episode, if you want future episodes to be about particular topics, go and throw that in the comments below. You know I definitely read them. I try and comment on as many of them as I possibly can, and I definitely take them to heart. So until the next episode, I'll see you then.